All right, now let me show you how to secure your API endpoints when using Auth0. So first, on the top right, go to your account settings. Next, go to the Advanced tab, scroll down, and enable OAuth 2.0 API authorization. By default, this is disabled, so you need to explicitly enable it. When you do this, you will see a new menu on the left side. That's called APIs. So we go here. Now, just like how we create a client on Auth0, you can also create an API. But this is just a configuration from Auth0 point of view. So we are not actually building an API here. We are going to build it separately with Node or ASP.NET Web API or any other frameworks. So on this page, on the right side, you see Create API button. Now we're going to give our API a name, Pepper API. Next, we need to give it a unique identifier. And by unique, I don't mean globally unique, but it has to be unique in your account. And by convention, we use a URL, like https api.pepper.com. Now, Auth0 is not going to call this endpoint. This is just a logical identifier. And I will show you where we'll use this in a second. Finally, we need to set the signing algorithm, which is RS-256 by default. And this uses asymmetric encryption. The other option is HS-256, which is symmetric encryption. The recommendation is to use asymmetric encryption because it's more secure. So let's go ahead and create this API. Now this takes us to the quick start page. If you scroll down, you can see sample code for C#, Node, or PHP to add authorization to your APIs. So in this demo, I'm going to use the Node example, but if you're not a Node developer, don't worry, it's very straightforward. I will quickly show you the C# code as well. So in the sample code here, the part that matters the most is this part. We're calling this JWT function, which returns a middleware object. And then by calling app.use, we add this middleware in request processing pipeline. So the job of this middleware is to look at the incoming request and look for an authorization header. There we should have a JSON Web Token, so it will extract that JSON Web Token, it will decode it, and it will ensure that it's a valid JSON Web Token. So it hides all the complexity around authorization from our application. Now, if you look at the C# example, it's very similar. So in the startup class, in the configure method, again, we're adding a middleware to our application. Now note that here we're setting two properties. One is audience, which is that logical identifier we set for our API. And the other is authority, which is our domain under Auth0. And this is basically the domain that is issuing these JSON Web Tokens. Now, once again, if you look at the Node example, you see here we have a reference to audience, which is the logical identifier for the API, and issuer. So to save time, I've simply copied this code into a Node project that you can download from the supplementary materials of this lecture. So there we have package.json that includes all the dependencies. All you need to do is download this project from this lecture, then go into terminal and run npm install. And finally, node app.js to start this process. Now, if you head over to localhost port 8080, you see we get this error. No authorization token was found because our HTTP request does not have that JSON Web Token. So in our Angular app, we need to use auth HTTP service to call this endpoint. And as you remember, that service will get the JSON Web Token from local storage and send it in the request header. Now, before moving on to the client part, I want to call this API using Postman. So first, let's go back to our dashboard. On the APIs page, I'm going to select our API, Pepper API, and then go to the Test tab. If you scroll down, you can see an access token here. So on the right side, click Copy Token. Now I've installed Postman to my Chrome. If you haven't installed it, simply Google it and add this extension to your Chrome. Now let's open up Postman. Okay, here it is. Now we're going to send the request to localhost port 8080/authorized. This is the endpoint that is defined in our sample node application. So if we send the request to this endpoint, and that request includes a valid JSON Web Token in the authorization header, we'll get a plain text response. All right, back here, if I send a simple HTTP request here, look, we get a 401 or unauthorized error. So I'm going to go in the headers tab and add a new key, authorization. And for the value, I'm going to use bearer and then paste that access token that we copied from Auth0 website. Now send again. Beautiful. We got a response with the status code 200. And if you look at the body of this response, you see secured resource. So this verifies that our API endpoint is secured properly. Next, I'm going to show you how to call this endpoint in our Angular app.